You wake to the persistent scratching of vermin beneath your straw-filled mattress. It is early morning, though you cannot tell exactly what hour, since clocks are a luxury far beyond your means. Time itself, you find, is measured only in terms of obligations and discomfort. Today, like every other day, your first obligation is to rise from bed. You hesitate, feeling each tired muscle protesting the movement, each joint aching in rebellion from yesterday's endless drumming. It never ends, does it? You finally sit up, and your head collides softly with the low, smoke blackened ceiling beams, a pleasant reminder of your social status. Poverty dictates that your house, your shelter, your castle remains little more than a glorified hut. The hut itself is humble, wooden walls stuffed unevenly with mud, straw, and dung, offering little defense against chill winds or creeping insects. Your floor, as always, is dirt. Richer men might have stone or polished wood, but you, oh fortunate drummer, feel the earth beneath your feet every morning, damp, cool, and crawling with life you'd rather ignore. Sliding your feet reluctantly into cold leather soled shoes, you silently curse the discomfort. These shoes have been repaired repeatedly, patched until the original leather can no longer be identified beneath layers of dubious hide. You do not wonder whose hide it once was. Some questions are better left unanswered. You stagger over to the crude fireplace, the only source of warmth in your dwelling, now reduced to gray ashes and soot covered stones. The fire went out during the night, as it always does, since wood is expensive and peat not much cheaper. Fuel, you reflect bitterly, is another luxury granted to those above your miserable station. With numb fingers, you poke the ashes, but no warmth remains, only a stale odor of burnt wood and smoky despair. Breakfast must be considered, though you have long abandoned any hope of it being enjoyable. You have, perhaps optimistically, stored half a loaf of coarse, mold edged bread from yesterday's wage. You inspect the bread with a resigned sigh. Mold is not a stranger, nor an enemy. You scrape off the greenish growth, acknowledging silently that tomorrow's bread might not be even this good. Hunger has taught you humility, patience, and the courage to eat questionable foods without too much contemplation. You gnaw on the bread's crust, chewing carefully around stubborn grains of sand and grit. This, you tell yourself grimly, builds character. Now you must drink. Water, life giving though it may be, poses its own special horrors. You pick up the chipped earthenware pitcher and peer inside at murky liquid, tinged with colors you cannot quite name. The water is fetched daily from the town well, a pit of questionable cleanliness. Yet, choice is not a companion of poverty, so you drink anyway, feeling each gritty swallow grate unpleasantly against your teeth. You decide not to dwell on what tiny living things might now reside in your gut. Health, you remind yourself with cold irony, is another luxury reserved for those richer and luckier than a common drummer. With your sparse breakfast finished, you must now prepare your drum. The drum is, quite literally, your lifeblood, Without it, you earn no coin. No coin, no bread, no bread. Well, you know that road all too well. You handle your drum with a mixture of reverence and resentment. The instrument itself is a wooden frame wrapped with animal skin, stretched tautly across the frame and tightened with rope. It once belonged to a cow, or perhaps a donkey. No matter, both creatures lived and died miserably, and now you continue their legacy by pounding daily on their former flesh. The skin, aged and weathered, demands constant maintenance. You inspect it carefully, searching for signs of rot or holes, and patch up imperfections with greasy wax or resin, purchased dearly from a local merchant who delights in overcharging desperate musicians. You apply the wax carefully, fingers becoming sticky and unpleasantly fragrant in the process. The skin feels rough beneath your hands, reminding you of your own hardened, calloused fingers, a drummer's true badge of honor. You know these fingers intimately, every scar, blister, and cut testament to a life of relentless pounding rhythms for others' amusement and command. You test the sound carefully, softly at first, tapping the drum head and listening critically. It is dull, flat, miserable, exactly as you expected. You sigh deeply, then tighten the ropes again, fingers aching from the effort. Another strike, still lifeless. You contemplate briefly smashing the drum altogether, then quickly dismiss the thought. Hunger again is a better motivator than anger or despair. You adjust the tension once more, finally achieving a barely acceptable sound. Mediocrity, you concede, is your daily victory. As you finish preparations, the distant, muffled noises from outside seep through the thin walls. Carts rattling over cobblestones, merchants yelling their wares, animals protesting their inevitable fates. Life in the medieval town awakening around you, indifferent to your private miseries. You peek through the tiny hole serving as your window, barely large enough for sunlight, yet large enough for icy drafts, to see clouds, heavy with rain, gathering above grimy rooftops. Rain, you muse bleakly, another daily companion of poverty. You gather yourself, donning your patched cloak. It smells strongly of damp wool, sweat, and stale beer. The fabric, coarse and rough, rubs your neck raw, yet another reminder that you are not among the fortunate. You hoist the drum across your back, where it settles heavily, pressing your shoulders into submission. Its weight is familiar, like a burden that has grown comforting only through long acquaintance. You step out of your hut and onto the street. Mud instantly clings to your shoes, wet and persistent, as if deliberately aiming to impede your already reluctant steps. Yet, forward you go. Drumming is your trade, your destiny, your curse. Your day, filled inevitably with noise, misery, and repetition, has officially begun. You glance once more at the dreary sky, already sprinkling a cold, penetrating rain upon you. Perhaps, you murmur sarcastically, voice swallowed by the wind, today will be different. Um, Sven, you know very well it will not. You leave your miserable hovel behind, stepping onto the narrow dirt road that winds through the crowded neighborhood where you dwell. Almost immediately, your senses are assaulted by an overwhelming mix of odors: dung, rotting vegetables, human waste, and the inescapable dampness of perpetually moist earth. The rain has already begun transforming the streets into sticky streams of mud. As you trudge forward, every step feels heavier than the last, the mud relentlessly gripping your shoes like a hungry predator determined to drag you downward. You pass a woman emptying the contents of her chamber pot into the street. She barely misses you, and her expression reveals no apology. After all, why should she apologize? You're only a drummer, barely a step above the rats that scurry around your feet. You pause briefly to glare upward, but she's already vanished into the gloom behind her sagging wooden door. The town is slowly coming alive, though not cheerfully. Shopkeepers, grim faced and suspicious, open their shutters and arrange their wares with resigned bitterness. Bread sellers display stale loaves covered in a thin layer of dust. Butcher stands proudly offer meat speckled with flies, and vegetable carts feature limp, bruised produce that appears to have suffered as much as those who buy it. You quickly avert your gaze, well aware that today's coins, if you even earn them, will afford you none of these dubious luxuries. As you near the town square, the sound of distant shouting reaches your ears. You know this means the morning's entertainment has already begun. Entertainment, of course, is a word the townsfolk apply generously to anything that distracts them from their harsh realities. Today's entertainment involves justice, though your personal experience has taught you that justice is merely cruelty wrapped in righteousness. Upon arriving at the square, you find yourself at the edge of a large, unruly crowd already assembled. You weave through the tightly packed bodies, all jostling and cursing in their eagerness to catch a glimpse of misery not their own. The drum strapped to your back feels heavier by the minute, as if your instrument is as reluctant as you to begin today's sordid performance. At the center of the square stands the pillory, an ugly contraption of weathered wood and rusted iron. Currently held captive by it is a thin, pathetic figure, head bowed beneath jeering insults and flung refuse. Rotten fruit, stones, and mud have already stained his ragged clothing, and a small trickle of blood runs down his forehead. His crime? Theft, perhaps, or more likely, poverty mistaken for dishonesty. The magistrate stands nearby, pompous in his heavy robes and wearing an expression of carefully cultivated disdain. He signals impatiently in your direction. It is your cue, your call to duty. With resignation, you step forward, freeing your drum from its harness and positioning it at your waist. Your cold fingers grip the wooden drumsticks, worn smooth by endless repetition. Begin, the magistrate commands sharply, his eyes narrowed, not bothering to hide contempt. You strike the drum with practiced monotony, a rhythmic pulse designed not to uplift, but rather to announce shame, to amplify humiliation. Thud, thud, thud. Each strike reverberates through the square, bouncing off walls, amplifying the misery of the condemned. Your wrists begin to ache almost immediately, but this pain is so familiar that you hardly notice anymore. Thud, thud, thud. The crowd grows louder, their insults increasingly creative and cruel. Faces twist in grotesque amusement, voices hoarse with delight at the misfortune of another. You recognize neighbors and acquaintances among them, normally subdued and quiet folk now transformed into something crueler, more primal. The spectacle of punishment has always had that effect, you realize bitterly, drawing out the ugliness within otherwise ordinary people. Rain continues to fall, steadily soaking through your thin cloak, seeping beneath your clothes, and chilling you to the bone. Your shoulders a hunch involuntarily against the cold. The magistrate, protected beneath a broad awning, seems oblivious to your discomfort. His eyes remain fixed on the prisoner, enjoying the pathetic scene unfolding before him. Thud, thud, thud. After what feels like an eternity of drumming, your rhythm slows briefly, and you feel the magistrate's glare instantly upon you. Keep pace, drummer, he snaps sharply. Your laziness insults the dignity of this court. You bite back the urge to laugh bitterly. Dignity? You glance again at the prisoner, covered in filth, bleeding and shaking beneath the jeers of the townsfolk. The irony is almost too powerful to bear, yet you obediently quicken your pace, your aching arms forcing a steady, merciless rhythm. Thud, thud, thud. Hours pass, marked only by changes in victims. You drum relentlessly, your arms numbing, your wrists burning, the muscles in your back screaming silently with each beat. You see thieves, beggars, adulterers, even a merchant caught cheating, each taking their turn beneath the hateful gaze of the crowd, each subjected to your endlessly monotonous drumming. The square becomes a muddy battlefield, littered with spoiled vegetables, broken cobblestones, and occasional pools of blood. Eventually, the rain lessens to a mere drizzle, but the damage is already done. The square is an ugly, slippery mess, churned by countless feet into a treacherous swamp. You slip once, nearly falling headlong into the muck, catching yourself only just in time. Laughter ripples through the crowd at your near misfortune, adding humiliation to your endless discomfort. You feel a deep, tired resentment welling up inside you, directed at everything: the crowd, the magistrate, the endless misery that defines your existence. Yet you keep drumming. Thud, thud, thud. Finally, mercifully, the magistrate signals an end to today's punishments. He straightens his robes, glances disdainfully at your muddied form, and departs without a word of thanks or acknowledgement. You lower your drumsticks, trembling slightly from exhaustion, your fingers stiff and unwilling to uncurl. You feel a brief sense of relief before realizing your reward for hours of pain is nothing more than a single small copper coin tossed contemptuously at your feet. Bending down painfully, you retrieve the coin from the mud, wiping it on your filthy cloak. The crowd disperses, leaving you alone in the churned mud of the square. Your clothes are soaked through, your skin clammy and cold, your bones aching from the day's endless drudgery. You glance around at the desolate, Filthy square and sigh deeply. Nothing ever truly changes here, does it? With heavy steps, you begin your weary trek home, acutely aware that tomorrow morning you'll awaken to repeat this meaningless ritual once again, drumming endlessly to someone else's rhythm, watching suffering unfold to your merciless beat. Today, just like every other day, you've done your duty as the town's drummer, obediently pounding out the dreary rhythm of cruelty disguised as justice. Your body aches, your mind is numb, and your heart holds only grim resignation. You know exactly what tomorrow holds: more mud, more rain, more cruelty, more drumming. It never ends, does it? As the sun fades behind gray, grim rooftops, you find yourself again trudging through muddy streets toward the town square. Tonight, you've been summoned to drum at the so called feast, a celebration intended to commemorate some minor victory or forgotten saint. You have long stopped caring which. Your task remains the same: create noise, manufacture merriment, and give an illusion of happiness where none truly exists. Arriving at the square, you see preparations well underway. Wooden tables and benches, crude and splintery, are laid out in rough lines. Lanterns sputter weakly, casting shadows that dance mockingly on the ground, while greasy torches illuminate the scene with a sickly yellow glow. Townsfolk have gathered eagerly, their hollow faces brightened only slightly by the promise of free ale and dubious entertainment. Your spot is, as always, at the edge of festivities, visible enough to provide rhythm, yet sufficiently distant to remain an outsider. You set your drum down heavily, its familiar weight now a constant, aching companion. Nearby musicians, equally disheveled, tune battered instruments: a lute with missing strings, a flute patched roughly with wax. You exchange weary nods. None of you harbor illusions about tonight's performance. It will be loud, coarse, repetitive, and, worst of all, endlessly long. Soon a booming voice breaks through the murmurs. It's the town reeve, a stout, ruddy faced man who loves celebrations because they allow him to loudly proclaim his own generosity. He announces the festivities officially opened, his tone overly cheerful, poorly masking disdain for the shabby crowd before him. You raise your drumsticks reluctantly and begin the monotonous rhythm. Boom, boom, tap, boom. Always the same beat, always the same pretense of joy. Ale begins flowing generously, dispensed from barrels that smell faintly spoiled, their contents brewed cheaply, rapidly, and without any genuine care. Still, the townsfolk drink greedily, determined to forget their daily hardships, even if only temporarily. Within minutes, sobriety evaporates like morning mist, leaving behind a crowd increasingly loud, increasingly vulgar, and increasingly unpredictable. Food, too, is provided in abundance, though food seems a generous term for what's actually offered. Coarse loaves of bread, hard as stones and spotted with mold, litter tables alongside meat pies, filled suspiciously with ingredients best left unnamed. You avert your eyes from these dubious delicacies, recalling vividly the sickening aftermath they inevitably produce. As the evening wears on, your drumming remains steady and relentless, matching the rising tide of drunkenness and chaos. Voices rise in unrestrained laughter and shouting. Manners are discarded, inhibitions quickly forgotten. A scuffle breaks out between two farmers arguing loudly over a stolen pint of ale. You watch indifferently, knowing from experience that fights like these are not interruptions, but integral parts of celebrations. The Reeve attempts half heartedly to intervene, his booming voice drowned out by the roaring of the intoxicated crowd. Plates shatter, benches overturn. A wave of destruction ripples outward, chaotic yet strangely predictable. All around you erupts a series of small calamities. A woman shrieking as ale spills down her dress, men bellowing curses, animals fleeing in panic. Yet your drumming continues unchanged, the relentless heartbeat beneath the madness. You watch with detached resignation as chaos expands, swirling like a storm of drunkenness, disorder, and violence. A man crashes heavily onto your makeshift stage, narrowly missing your drum. You sidestep quickly, heart briefly racing, but resume playing almost immediately. Such disturbances are hardly new. The musicians beside you offer no more than disinterested glances. They, too, have seen worse. Across the square, another fight breaks out, larger this time. You observe calmly as fists fly wildly, teeth are knocked loose, and blood splashes dramatically onto tables still laden with food. The Reeve, red faced and shouting futilely, is shoved roughly aside. Order, like sobriety, vanished long ago. Your hands ache fiercely now, numbness settling deeply into wrists and arms. But stopping would be folly. Your drumming, oddly enough, remains the only consistent element amidst the chaos. Your rhythm, monotonous yet strangely comforting, seems almost a lifeline. Boom, boom, tap, boom. Perhaps, you reflect cynically, your drum beats are the only sanity remaining here. As the fight escalates, soldiers from the local guard arrive belatedly, their rusted helmets askew, eyes wide with uncertainty. Rather than calming the crowd, their presence only fuels its frenzy. Stones are hurled, insults shouted, the line between revelry and riot rapidly vanishing. You keep drumming. The musicians beside you hesitate briefly, then resume their own weary accompaniment, resigned to being trapped in this grotesque symphony. Hours pass slowly, measured only by your endless drum beats. The celebration has entirely lost its initial facade. Tables lay broken and overturned, food and ale pooling together in unpleasant puddles. Villagers sprawled drunkenly or injured across the ground. Soldiers futilely attempt to restore order, their commands barely audible above the cacophony. Yet your drumming endures, mechanical, unchanging, numbing your body and soul in equal measure. Then suddenly, a sharp, sickening crack. You glance upward just in time to see a man thrown violently into one of the support beams, holding up the awning above you. Wood splinters loudly, snapping like brittle bones. You leap sideways instinctively, drum clutched protectively, but the awning collapses heavily onto your shoulder, knocking you to the ground. You lay there, stunned momentarily, crushed beneath wet canvas and shattered wood. Pain surges through your arm and shoulder, fierce and sharp. You struggle weakly, finally freeing yourself from the wreckage, covered now in mud, ale, and blood that isn't yours. Nearby, your drum lies cracked and battered, its stretched animal skin torn beyond repair. You sit numbly amidst the devastation, cradling your wounded arm, too exhausted to rise. Around you, the riot subsides gradually, finally sated by the sheer exhaustion of its participants. The reeve limps pathetically past, expression bitter, his feast turned nightmare. He barely spares you a glance despite your injuries. After all, you're just the drummer. Finally, as the last drunken villagers stagger away and soldiers wearily depart, you push yourself shakily to your feet, clutching your broken drum. Your body feels bruised, battered, and unbearably heavy. The square is silent now, a battlefield littered with debris and misery, illuminated weakly by flickering torches. As you limp painfully back toward your tiny hut, the cruel irony of tonight's celebration is painfully clear. You played your drum tirelessly, steadily providing rhythm to a festival designed to celebrate happiness, prosperity, and order. Yet the reality was anything but just another ugly scene of drunkenness, violence, and chaos. Your damaged drum hangs uselessly in your hand, broken beyond repair. Tomorrow, you must somehow mend or replace it, though you know both options are nearly impossible given your poverty. You pause, staring bitterly back at the devastated square, empty now save for broken tables, spilled ale, and the ghosts of tonight's mayhem. You whisper to no one but yourself, bitterly, sarcastically, a fine celebration indeed. Then, limping painfully, you vanish into the shadows, preparing once more to repeat the cycle tomorrow. After all, you are the drummer, always needed, never respected, forever trapped in this bleak and relentless rhythm. It never ends, does it? You wake to the unpleasant reality of your injured shoulder throbbing sharply, a grim souvenir from last night's catastrophic feast. Even in sleep, poverty offers no comfort. The pain is merely muted, never truly gone. Groaning softly, you rise slowly from your straw filled mattress, instantly aware that today's task offers no rest, only further misery. Today, you must accompany a merchant caravan on its journey, an opportunity you've reluctantly accepted out of sheer desperation. Your broken drum lies in a corner, hastily repaired late into the night, its animal skin patchwork fragile, held together mostly by desperation and sticky resin. You gaze bleakly at the instrument, wondering how much longer it and you can endure. Outside your hut waits a dreary gray dawn, wet and unwelcoming. The merchant, an arrogant, corpulent figure named Aldred, impatiently waves you forward, his wagons already packed with goods wrapped tightly against theft and weather alike. His scornful gaze falls upon your patched cloak, your miserable drum, your weary face. Keep pace today, drummer, Aldred snaps irritably, and do not slow us down. You nod bitterly, accustomed to such treatment. You climb clumsily onto one of the wagons, wincing as your shoulder protests every small movement. Settling uncomfortably atop rough wooden planks, you grip your drum tightly, preparing yourself for a journey filled with discomfort, monotony, and inevitable hardship. The caravan moves slowly out of town, wheels rattling noisily over uneven cobblestones, jolting painfully through your spine with every bump. The road soon becomes muddy and treacherous, churned by countless hooves and wheels before you. Cold rain begins to fall again, trickling persistently beneath your cloak, soaking through your garments. Within minutes, you are cold, wet, and thoroughly miserable. Hours pass without event, marked only by the monotonous landscape and the caravan's relentless pace. Aldred, comfortably seated under a protective canopy, pays you no heed, except occasionally to shout impatiently if your drumming falters. Your job, of course, is to keep rhythm, both to encourage tired animals and, supposedly, deter bandits. You doubt very much your monotonous, repetitive beats would frighten even the weakest thief, but questioning Aldred is pointless. Obedience is easier, though no less humiliating. At midday, the caravan halts briefly beside a stagnant pond, a brownish pool buzzing with insects. You descend stiffly from the wagon, legs numb, body aching, shoulder throbbing relentlessly. Food provided is minimal: stale bread, salted pork nearly as tough as leather, water drawn suspiciously from the murky pond itself. Hunger, however, is a compelling argument. So you chew grimly, swallowing without enjoyment, grateful only for the momentary rest. Aldred impatiently barks orders, resuming the journey far too quickly. You scramble awkwardly back onto the wagon, your shoulders screaming with each motion. Resuming your relentless drumming, you become lost again in endless monotony, the caravan slowly trudging forward beneath darkening skies. As daylight fades into an oppressive twilight, the caravan halts once more, this time in a clearing surrounded by dense, foreboding trees. Aldred orders you curtly to set up camp, assigning you the unpleasant task of gathering damp firewood from the forest edge. You stumble reluctantly into shadowy gloom, eyes nervously scanning thick undergrowth for any sign of danger: wolves, bandits, or worse. Fear mingles bitterly with exhaustion, anxiety gnawing at your already weakened nerves. Eventually, you return, arms laden with soggy branches unlikely ever to burn properly. Aldred merely snorts dismissively at your pathetic offering, shaking his head in contemptuous resignation. Worthless, he mutters, glancing disdainfully at your drum. You pretend not to hear him, silently hating both the merchant and your own helplessness. Night descends rapidly, darkness thick and suffocating. You sit miserably near the smoldering campfire, its weak, smoky flames providing barely enough warmth to keep shivers at bay. Sleep, you quickly realize, will be impossible. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sends your imagination racing wildly. Bandits, beasts, ghosts, everything your weary mind can conjure appears vividly in the oppressive darkness. Hours drag painfully onward. filled only with anxiety, cold, and discomfort. Your injured shoulder aches persistently, refusing even a moment's peace. The drum beside you seems a bitter reminder of your endless servitude, its patched skin illuminated eerily in firelight, symbolizing a life barely held together by scraps and desperation. Suddenly, a cry rings sharply from nearby wagons. Alarm quickly spreads, shouts filling the darkness, panic erupting instantly. You leap clumsily to your feet, heart pounding frantically, terror gripping you tightly. Bandits have found you at last. Armed figures emerge swiftly from darkness, faces hidden, blades glinting ominously. Chaos unfolds rapidly. Guards scramble, villagers scatter, horses scream in panic. Aldred bellows angrily, his bravery clearly evaporated. You clutch your drum uselessly, frozen in fear. One bandit rushes directly toward you, his eyes cold beneath a tattered hood. Instinctively, you throw your patched drum toward him, an act of desperation more than bravery. It strikes him squarely, shattering instantly on impact, distracting him long enough for you to scramble away, heart racing wildly. You flee blindly into darkness, stumbling through underbrush, tripping over unseen roots, fleeing endlessly until your lungs burn and your legs collapse beneath you. You fall heavily onto cold, damp earth, gasping for breath, trembling violently. Behind you, distant shouts gradually fade, replaced by oppressive silence. Hours pass slowly before you dare to move again, cautiously limping back toward camp. When finally you return, devastation greets your weary eyes. Wagons overturned, goods scattered or stolen, villagers injured and demoralized. Aldred sits dejectedly upon shattered crates, head bowed in bitter defeat. Seeing you approach empty handed, his eyes narrow in renewed contempt. Your drum, he snaps harshly. Where is it? Destroyed, you mumble quietly, avoiding his glare. He snorts disgustedly, turning away sharply. Useless drummer, he mutters bitterly, voice dripping venom. I should have known better than to trust your worthless noise. You say nothing, exhaustion numbing your spirit. Silently, you help a villager salvage remaining goods, working mechanically until morning arrives cold, gray, and cheerless. The journey back home is painful and silent, the air heavy with defeat, every step bitterly echoing your inadequacies. Arriving finally at your tiny hut, battered, broken, empty handed, you collapse wearily onto your crude mattress, unable even to remove mud stained clothes. Your drum is gone, your livelihood lost in a single moment of panic and fear. Tomorrow's uncertainty looms heavily above you, darker and bleaker than ever. Yet sleep mercifully overtakes you at last, though even dreams offer little escape, filled only with echoes of shouting bandits, snapping drums, and Aldred's hateful accusations. You drift into darkness, knowing painfully well that tomorrow promises no relief. Another cycle of hardship awaits, another day of poverty, pain, and relentless suffering. Yet somehow, your will to endure persists, driving you forward, endlessly, numbly, resigned. Your journey, like your life, remains grimly endless, endlessly grim. It never ends, does it? You awaken slowly, eyes heavy, body reluctant, feeling as if sleep itself has betrayed you, abandoning your weary bones to reality once again. Morning comes as an unwelcome guest, arriving early, lingering stubbornly, refusing to grant even the smallest mercy. Your injured shoulder throbs in protest, a painful echo of yesterday's failures, the humiliating defeat still fresh in your aching muscles and bruised pride. The small, filthy hut you call home greets you coldly, its familiar ugliness somehow more pronounced today. The ceiling beams sag menacingly, as if threatening collapse, while walls of rotted wood and mud seem eager to disintegrate into the very earth beneath. You rise slowly from your crude straw mattress, reluctant feet sinking into the damp, cold dirt floor that never seems dry, never feels clean. Rats scatter briefly, disturbed by your movement, but soon return, bold in their knowledge that your dwelling belongs as much to them as it does to you. Hunger immediately reminds you of its constant companionship, gnawing sharply at your belly, demanding attention you're unable to provide. Breakfast, once again, is little more than a bitter memory, a luxury you can scarcely afford. Searching through your bare shelves, you find only stale crumbs, bits of bread too small, too hard even for rats. You swallow them nonetheless, each dry mouthful scraping painfully against your throat, mocking your persistent hunger rather than relieving it. Outside, the sky is predictably bleak, gray clouds heavy with cold rain lingering ominously. The air, filled with a persistent chill, seeps insidiously through your patched clothing, gripping your bones like an unyielding hand. The town, already awake, hums quietly with subdued activity, the noises of everyday drudgery floating through the thin walls of your hut, indifferent to your miseries. Your drum, now little more than splintered wood and ruined skin, lies in the corner, a bitter testament to your lost livelihood. Its battered fragments silently accuse you of weakness, failure, and poverty. Without your drum, you are nothing. Without your drum, you earn nothing. Without your drum, you are worth nothing. Yet the world outside waits impatiently. Bills must still be paid. Bread must still be bought. Life, merciless and uncaring, continues relentlessly forward. Summoning what little strength remains, you dress slowly, wincing as your shoulder protests every movement. You wear the same dirty, torn clothes as yesterday, clothes you have worn for countless days, their fibers stiffened by grime and sweat, their stench a constant, unwelcome companion. Stepping out of your hut, you immediately sink into mud, thick and foul, waiting eagerly at your doorstep, as if deliberately placed there by fate itself. Each heavy step through town feels like trudging through molasses, your shoes quickly coated in mud that clings possessively, refusing release. Passers-by, indifferent to your plight, glance briefly and look away quickly, as if poverty itself might be contagious. You keep your eyes downcast, unwilling to acknowledge their disdain. Reaching the town square, you pause uncertainly, suddenly feeling helpless and exposed without your drum. The square itself remains scarred from previous festivities, broken benches, overturned barrels, and patches of blood still staining cobblestones. You realize bitterly how fitting it is that you stand empty handed amidst ruins, a drummer without a drum, a worker without purpose, another forgotten casualty of society's relentless cruelty. Yet you cannot linger. Hunger and need compel you onward, forcing you to seek work, charity, scraps, anything to survive another day. You drift from stall to stall, merchant to merchant, each encounter marked by rejection, scorn, or indifference. The baker waves you off irritably, unwilling to spare even stale crusts. The butcher's laughter echoes cruelly, mocking your empty pockets. And Aldred, the merchant, spits bitterly in your direction, blaming you entirely for yesterday's disastrous ambush. Hours pass slowly, each rejection deepening your despair, every moment spent cold, hungry, and hopeless. Rain begins again, its icy droplets stinging mercilessly, soaking through clothing already dampened by sweat and shame. You retreat reluctantly to your hut, empty handed, defeated, feeling lower than the very mud that now cakes your shoes. Night arrives swiftly, darkness falling heavily upon your hovel, bringing neither peace nor rest, only deeper misery, colder temperatures, and the endless gnawing of hunger. You sit in the near darkness, illuminated faintly by the dying embers of a small, weak fire, fuel gathered desperately from scraps and broken wood. Its warmth is minimal, its comfort non existent, yet you cling stubbornly to this pitiful flame, unwilling to surrender entirely to darkness. Dinner, of course, is non existent. You sit miserably beside the fire, belly aching fiercely with emptiness, mind numb with exhaustion and despair. You attempt to distract yourself with vague memories of better days, though truthfully, even your happiest memories seem now merely dreams or cruel illusions. Reality, you realize grimly, has always been hardship, poverty, and endless suffering. Happiness was always a fleeting deception. Eventually, exhaustion overtakes even your persistent hunger, and you drag yourself slowly toward bed, limbs heavy, heart heavier still. Your mattress, damp and uncomfortable, offers little consolation as you collapse wearily upon it, pulling thin blankets close in a futile attempt to stave off biting cold. Rats scamper audibly nearby, boldly resuming their nighttime activities, unafraid of your weak protests. As you drift into a restless sleep, the truth becomes painfully clear. Tomorrow holds no promise of improvement, only repetition. You will wake again hungry, cold, miserable, desperate. Poverty offers no respite, no relief, only endless suffering and constant struggle. Yet somehow, despite everything, your aching bones, your growling belly, your empty hands, some stubborn instinct compels you onward, enduring hardships day after relentless day. Your existence, bleak and hopeless, continues stubbornly forward, trapped in a cycle of poverty and pain, endlessly repeated, endlessly endured. In the darkness, as sleep overtakes your exhausted mind, you acknowledge bitterly yet truthfully, it never ends.